So we haven't started yet.
We're just
But I like recording these bits because what I do is I edit them. If there's anything good, I basically edit them and I have it as like the beginning part of the podcast, and then I do our introduction, like our music and our logo, and then the actual podcast starts. So if we say something amusing or something that's relevant, I put that at the beginning as like a kind of like, hey, like this is us.
We're
like,
so
this is us
cool.
chatting. We're so cool.
fun. You want to be in our club?
Fun. Then the intro starts, and then the podcast begins.
And you could just do that bit that you've just done because that was well good.
Yeah. Welcome to another edition of the Isolation Podcasts. I think this is Isolation Podcast 6.
Something like that.
Yeah, with my man Nick Daines. We got a special guest, my wife, Vicky Hall, or Utley, whatever she decides to call herself.
Forever Utley.
Forever Utley. And below me, we've got our actual guest, Hannah Stewart. Hey! How are you, Hannah?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very well, very well.
Good.
Surviving lockdown.
Surviving lockdown. Me and my wife are still friends at the moment. For now. We've still got another 2 more weeks.
At least.
At least of this.
This is keeping you going. This is as long as you can keep podcasting, Sam, then you stay out of Vicky's way.
I'm not joking. This has actually kept me saying, hello, there's a small human.
A special guest. Say hello. See everyone? Hi. You're going to be... Sorry.
That's all right.
She needs one of those 8 brushes that you've got in front of you.
Oh yeah, she needs the stage 3 brushes. No, you're going to... Oh, she's got the other emergency brush downstairs.
Yeah, don't need that one, mate. Plenty of brushes in your house.
So many brushes.
So many brushes.
Yes, it does. It does. She's just doing her hair. No, let's just say so. She's just squirting conditioner on her hair because that's what you need when you have lots of hair.
I'm so jealous.
That's what makes her hair so shiny.
Yeah. See?
Boswallocks.
She doesn't. What was that, Nick?
Boswallocks. That is
Sorry,
it.
You're going to have to explain that because I've definitely probably cut that out.
I'm going to Google it. So a full explanation for you while you continue to find out how everyone is.
We found out. We know. I know how Vic is. I've been living with her. I've been stuck in the house with her for 3 weeks, mate.
Boswallocks. Not sure how you would spell this.
Oh, how does this internet work?
Padlocks? No. Boswallocks.
Basically, so what Nick's trying to find on the internet is it's
anti-wrinkle treatment. Boswallocks. Actually.
So why do they put that in like caffeine shampoo to try?
Well, it's an ingredient found in a range of anti-wrinkle creams. Served an example. Oh no!
You told me this is in.
No, it doesn't exist. I thought it was in shampoos.
No, you've confused yourself.
Carl Pilkington made it.
No, did he? That Carl Pilkington is always spoiling our podcast.
He's always getting me.
He's always getting you, mate. You look
I
at like.
believe everything I listen to.
Which is you've set the tone for our podcast here, Nick.
Yeah, which is
the Carl Pilkington.
Boswallocks.
Talking complete Boswallocks.
Yeah. Not quite as much as the otter, but I'm probably not.
That was good earlier. That was very good. So, we've got Hannah Stewart on because we want to talk about all things mobility. So, let's start. So, Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are your credentials?
My credentials? Oh, that's... I am a yoga teacher and a mobility teacher.
Right, you're a mobility specialist, actually.
Oh, well, yes. Okay. of sorts. And I am half of Yoga Reloaded. So me and my friend Emma run a yoga teacher training school that everything we teach is science-based and modernizes sort of how movement is taught.
It's brilliant, by the way. It's absolutely amazing. So I'm lucky enough. I talk about progressive overload, which is a strength training principle within this course. But during it, we did, Hannah did a video of a chaturanga, which is essentially a push-up. And it was probably the best teaching example of a push-up that I've ever seen. And like, that's including myself and PTs in general. It was really, really good, like really well thought out, like so simplified and yet not easy at the same time. Like it built up. It was just really well done. And I was like, whoever does that course is in for our lucky people, basically. And we'll get like a really good qualification at the end of it. Not just something that they can stamp yoga teacher onto their like list of achievements or CBDs or CPDs. So I know CBD is something completely different. That's something that they can stamp on their CPDs. It's a genuinely good qualification that will take them very far. That's how I felt about it anyway.
I'm going to add that to our website, I think.
I think you should. It's really, I'm genuine about that though. It's really,
thank you. Good. I think that's, I don't know how interested anyone is in yoga, but it's so often that you'll
be surprised. So in the jiu-jitsu community, I think yoga is like if people think, oh, I need to get flexible, the first thing that's not just jiu-jitsu, that's in general. I think when people immediately think, oh, I'm not very flexible there, I really need to do some yoga or something. That everyone says that to me. And there's a lot of people within jiu-jitsu, especially with things like yoga for BJJ, who kind of popularize it. I think it is quite a high. I think people do think about it a lot. In fact, I've heard jiu-jitsu called like involuntary yoga. So kind of, it's kind of, I think they kind of do come.
So the art of folding clothes with people in it.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good description. I like that.
Yeah. It's mostly involuntary for me.
So I think, lots of things. There's like yoga is such a massive umbrella term, and there's so many different styles of yoga, so many different schools of yoga, and one person's experience of what yoga is very different to someone else's, depending on the teacher and the style and everything. And going back to what you were saying about the chaturanga or the push-up, lots of yoga schools will teach just that. They'll just go, oh, here we go, this is the shape that your body needs to make. And one of the things that I'm interested in, and I know that Sam's interested in this as well, is the components that build that shape, or the prerequisites, what's required of the body to be able to do that. So
how
when
it
you
actually performs that movement, rather than just the movement for the sake of being a movement.
Yeah, and it becomes so much more interesting when you actually do start to look at it with curiosity as to what your body can do, what your body potentially can't do, why, and what, and it becomes a big puzzle that you can start to unpick and work out as to how you can make your body able to do this stuff, rather than just assuming, oh, this is a pose that you see 50 times in a yoga class, I should just do it. So
why is that a pose? Why am I doing this? Because it's in the book and this is what we're supposed to do, rather than this is why we do this movement, it's for this purpose or for that. And I think that's kind of why, like, how long have we known each other now? Over 3 years? More?
Longer than
Than that, probably. But kind of our principles matched, didn't they? Like the whys, and like very like looking into why we do stuff rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
And being able
And
to
also,
explain why.
yeah, and not looking at things from like an elitist point of view. It's like we are all so different.
Yeah.
Because of genetics and lifestyle and stuff like that. And sometimes people just want to be able to achieve something, to do something, without questioning their sort of uniqueness. And I think if you look at all movement, jiu-jitsu, yoga or whatever, through curiosity of what you can do and why you can't and how you can get there, then it just
yeah, exactly. I think exactly.
Potential and capabilities, like
yeah. And limitations, because everyone's got them. Like I think that kind of brought me to you was the fact that my limitation was my knee, and it was about all I wanted was to get it better, like really quickly, and all I wanted was it to not be there anymore, like to be able to use my knee like I was before I had my surgery. But the reality of, and I think it's something that I've kind of only just come to realize recently, is that it's not about the end game. I think we've been talking about this a lot on the past few podcasts. Is I've always been focused on the end results, and it's not really about the end result. It's about the process and enjoying the process of doing.
Journey.
Yeah, doing the stuff is what actually ends. In fact, we both, the reason why I come to that conclusion, and it kind of resonates with my jiu-jitsu as well as my mobility practice, is Moses Bernard. You know, I think I sent you the post, and he literally just sat there and talked about how he just picked a exercise or a couple of exercises to do a day, and it wasn't about where he got to at the end of it. He just wanted to do it for a year to see what happened, but he wanted to enjoy the process of doing it over, like, it would just
The same exercise every day.
Well, he focused on specific joints. That's how he looked at it. He kind of he picked a couple of joints where he felt that he was the least mobile, and he focused on doing exercises for those joints every day. Like, and he said he did it for at minimum 10 minutes a day or something, or 20 minutes a day was the minimum amount that he picked that he could do every day. And he did it and like now he moves so well. And it's like, and I think it's the point I'm making is the process of the movement.
And you've just basically summed up yoga there, because like it is like yoga is the journey, and people get lost with the end goal, and everyone does. And then the thing is, if you're only ever focused on the end goal, you aren't living in the present, you aren't living in the process or the moment and stuff. And shit happens all the time, you know. As you know, injuries happen, stuff goes wrong. We do our best to try and like mitigate the injuries with how we train our bodies and stuff, but basically there's no guarantees. And if you're certainly have a goal, you know, goals are great, you should always have a goal, but if you can't be with where you're at, then you're kind of missing the enjoyment process of everything. And we have this misconception that there's an ideal, that there's the same potential for movement in everyone, and that it just is not the case. And if you're striving to move like Nick and he's striving to move like Ian, you know, they're never going to get there because our bodies are so different. So you have to be on your journey in your body, and like you were saying, just enjoy it.
Shush you.
Yeah, Scamp wants
my dog going crazy. Yeah, I agree. But it's funny because I kind of always looked at that approach from other training perspectives, like through weight training or through jiu-jitsu, but I've never considered that, funnily enough, with things like mobility practice or you know, stuff that I didn't like. And I think that's kind of the case why people, especially if you do yoga, you probably find that a lot of people who do yoga are quite naturally flexible, or, you know, at least passively flexible anyway, because it's something they feel they're good at. straight away, and then they don't have to. They can just do it, rather than someone like, because I get a lot of people, especially who go, "I don't like yoga because it's really hard," and like, it just doesn't. It's not for me. It's basically too hard. They can't do it. They can't do the poses like the teacher can do the poses, so they don't want to continue it anymore.
I think you can test your patience as well. You have to be patient, because some people want it to be more fast-paced, or if they're not sweating,
they're not working
anything.
out. Yeah, they're not training. If they're not like, if their heart rate's not through the roof and they're sweating and they feel like they've been beaten up, then they don't feel like they've done any training, which is not the case. And
I mean, obviously you're going to be attracted to what you're good at. You know, you're not going to, someone who's built for lifting weights is not going to become a sprinter. No. You know, you're going to be drawn to genetically what you're better dispositioned for, and I think that's true. So you do get bendier people that are drawn to yoga. I'm interestingly the opposite. I began yoga as the stiffest person in the world and was quite amused by how little I could move. And it became this like journey of curiosity about, well, why can't I move? Why doesn't my knee straighten and all this sort of thing?
Which I think that kind of sets you apart, because like there's a lot of kind of Instagram, like kind of like, I'm going to put it in inverted commas, like celebrities and things like that, but you don't know what. Usually you find out that they've come from, like, they do these yoga classes online, but generally they come from like dancing backgrounds.
You see a lot of people, and a lot of I mean, we get slated for some of the things that we sort of say, our principles, if you like, behind Yoga Reloaded. It's like, just because you have practiced yoga for 2 years doesn't mean you should go and teach, because there's a recommendation by the government, like the governing body of yoga or Yoga Alliance or something like that, who say, after 2 years you can go and do a teacher training. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to. And you naturally get gymnasts and dancers and stuff who are drawn to a yoga practice because it maintains the stuff that they've done, in the past. And that, like, range of motion doesn't interest me at all. I'm not impressed by someone's range of motion at all. It means nothing. I'm like, some people, they get their leg behind their head. They can, it doesn't impress me. There's no value to it. The value is...
It impresses me.
Oh, of course, yeah. But the value of stuff is in the function of why do you, I don't care what you want to do. If you want to chuck weights over your head or do jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, just get your body in the best possible condition to be able to do that thing. That's what interests me.
So we both...
Longevity as well, right?
100%.
Sorry?
And longevity as well.
Longevity. I think that should be the well, there's two ends of the spectrum, isn't there? Fun is one end. You do something because you enjoy it, and you guys obviously...
Or if you're competitive in something. Obviously, if in extremes, like if you're a competitive fighter, for instance, you're not going to be able to do that for long periods of time. So you chuck everything you've got at it for the time that you can. And then your career is like a finite career, isn't it? It will come to an end at some point and your body will probably break. But the idea is to get as far as you can in that sport before it breaks, basically. Whereas and then the opposite end of the spectrum is like not just one.
You see it with footballers, funnily enough, a lot. Like Neil Ruddock's a good example because he lives...
high level athletes, it's all the same. Yeah.
He was a professional footballer for Liverpool and loads of other clubs. You see him now, he's like 5 times the size he was then. Yeah,
but don't forget, he was probably in a situation where he was training so hard, so often.
The chefs at the ground, he's being trained, fed, all the rest of it. And then when you stop being a professional in anything, if you don't carry on doing something, you'll revert to...
Or the opposite, right? So it might not be just the fact, he might have even kind of rebelled because he might have thought, do you know what? I'm not a professional footballer anymore. I can eat what I want and I don't have to do any exercise, so I'm not going to. I think there's a study that's been done that relates to that, and it's the mortality rates of workers who are workers who do like physical jobs and their relationship to retirement.
Yeah.
So I think like when they retire, people who do active jobs, when they retire, they tend to do nothing because they're so busy all their life. And as soon as they stop, they tend to like basically die quite early. And I think that's probably the same mentality as what you're talking about there with Neil Ruddock, like that footballer. But you know, I don't know him, so it might not be. But
you
like,
can't miss him if you see him down in the town. Like,
is he from around here? Is he?
Yeah, he lives in Ashford. He lives in
is he?
Park. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, he's nice. He's massive, mate, honestly.
Yeah.
And he
the Razor.
Razor Ruddock, exactly that. But like, I know recently he's been doing like fitness stuff and trying to get fit again and things like that. But
that's awesome.
He's so big, you know, like he's a really big. He was a really big guy anyway. Like in football, I think he had to have like special shorts made because his thighs were so massive. Like, like he was one of those. Like he was obviously like big, you know, getting himself into really good shape. That he was like as big as you can be for a footballer who needs to be as athletic as that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, don't need to worry about that. Don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Can booze and eat curry, and then just went boom, you know.
Yeah.
And he's trying to shed some of the stone, I think.
That's quite common with athletes in general.
Yeah,
especially at the high level, because they probably have to be so strict with their diet. They have to be so regimented when it comes to training that it actually stops becoming fun. Like we do jiu-jitsu on a super amateur level.
Yeah.
And it's fun because we don't have to be there every day as a job. We literally, we are just come in, we train, we chat to our mates, and then we go home at the end of the day and then something else worries us. That's where we go to alleviate our worries. Whereas
that's not the main worry of our life, is it? That's the fun bit that like we go to work and then we get to spend our money doing what we want to do, or like, you know, it's different if that is what someone's paying you and saying, right, you've got to go and do this, and you've got to go to Manchester next week because you're fighting on this show. Then Tuesday you're doing a seminar here, and this, like, oh man, it's then everything's work is
it can become stressful, right? And then it doesn't become fun. And then when it's not fun for a long period of time, you just don't want anything to do with it when you retire, or if you retire.
100%.
So sorry, we've gone on a massive tangent there, Hannah, right in the middle of what you were saying.
No, but I think it's really relevant to, obviously, like, I do work with not high level athletes at all, but people who, you know, train and stuff like that. But people get quite obsessive with, I think there is an obsession with mobility at the moment. It's a real buzzword, isn't it? And
I think CrossFit has something to do with that, because it's, you know, it's shown that, and you know, like I'm not shitting on CrossFit here. Like I like it, but it's like they've shown that the average Joe can do, you know, kind of high, like Olympic lifts, which take a really extreme high level of mobility with an extremely high level of strength to be able to perform.
Yeah.
And make it like an everyday exercise, you know. And
I mean, it's a lot of like you say, a lot of the principles of CrossFit are really, really good. You know, like the type of training it's really great, but it isn't for everyone, or it is for everyone, but not everyone is ready for it. And so you suddenly go into an environment where you've got to lift heavily, you know, differently, move differently to how you ever have before, and then people believe that you can very quickly change your 20 odd years or 30 odd years, however old you are, habits to change your mobility, to suddenly, within a period of a few weeks or months, become very mobile. And we know, you know, this stuff takes years.
Like, I didn't realize, like, I figured you just do it for a few months and suddenly you become flexible, but it's genuinely not the case. Like,
do you know what? This is the thing, that for some people it is. And this is why you can't guess, judge, or know how someone's going to react to mobility training, and you can't say that one type of input is going to work for one person, and you don't know. And it's like, if you come from a background when you're younger where you have done a lot of stuff like gymnastics or ballet or something, you're going to likely get some mobility gains quite quickly. If the type of, I don't know, your genes have a massive effect on this as well. So I mean, I know you and I have been doing stuff together for a while, Sam, and your knee is going to take some serious work to make it more mobile, because you've reached your peak, you've reached your edge with that.
Effort that I admittedly have not really like put in, which is, I just figured like, well, in fact, I didn't figure. I was almost kind of told by the physiotherapist that I went to see, like the one that you get given after surgery, was as soon as they got me back to 90-degree flexion on my knee, they kind of patted me on the bum and was like, "Don't worry, it'll come back. Like you're good, you'll be all right." Like, so I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I just need a bit of time, and it'll be back to normal." And then lo and behold, 3 years later, and I still haven't got that flexion back. And I'm like, hold on a sec, I should have done more here, and I need to do more. So it's a bit of a stark realization and a bit of a kick in the gut, really.
I mean, it's
you
so
only get out what you put in, right? So like, I admittedly haven't done enough.
You do get out what you put in, but also, I mean, like this is like, this could open up so many discussions here, but we're like, we've got this amazing NHS, we've got this incredible, you've got this wonderful knee surgery done, and you got given your rehab, and they have a place that they want to rehab you back to, and unfortunately that place is the sedentary human. So you have to really, really push to say, I am active, I am someone who trains. One of my yoga students, Ash, he doesn't mind me talking about him, we know Ash, he had his ACL repaired, and so the like you, but the most important thing for him was to go into this operation with absolutely no fear and the belief that he would be able to rehab. And he had an amazing physiotherapist, and he said, "Look, I know you're going to rehab me back to 90, but I want you to rehab me back beyond 90. I want to get the movement that I've had before." And she was like, "If you want to put in the work, let's do this." And 8 months post surgery, he was back to normal movement, and they normally give you 18 months to 2 years. And it was just with his insistence and very good guided help from the physio, and we were able to support that in the yoga classes and stuff, which brings us on to another thing that
but can I just put a point in there, is that the fact that your yoga classes were able to support his movement. So like, if he went to any other class and say and he said, "I've had ACL surgery, I can do these exercises," you'd be kind of, if I was a group instructor, you'd probably be like, "Okay, well, do what you can, but if you feel pain in a certain situation, don't do it," and then you just carry on the class as normal. But like the way you teach that class, and the way you like you said, you're not interested in passively stretching, you're more interested in how they move actively, or their active range supports what he wanted to do by getting back into his full range of motion. I think they were both synergistic. So I know you're trying to be very humble here and say
no,
all the physios help, but you played a part within his rehabilitation.
I want to make a point that I am not medically trained in any way, shape or form, and I would never assume that I would know this stuff at all, but I would know that with the advice he's been given, that I can safely support that. I would never say that I know better than a physio. No. I wouldn't. And I think there's a lot of yoga teachers, there's a lot of mobility teachers out there that have done some courses, have done some sports massage courses where they've been able to assess someone's mobility. It's not their fault, because they've been given this training, and they believe that they suddenly have all this knowledge that they can genuinely help it, and it's not the case. We can't diagnose, help, fix or do anything, but we can work with their physios to maintain the momentum in their healing.
Sometimes it comes down to the awareness and knowledge of the person that's got the injury. Like Sam's saying, You know, what you said about that is spot on. I had it with my back as well. Is that their only function essentially is to get you back to the sedentary human. You know, they're not there to put you into this, like, from where they see it, it's not, you know, it's like, I see improvement, right, you're good to go, that's it. You can walk, you can go to work, you can do this, that and the other, that's enough. And anything beyond that, if you want to do anything further that you were doing before, that's up to you. But sometimes, you know, you don't necessarily realize that that's on you. Like,
well, no, and then you've got, you know, like in your case, is you'll go, right, okay, so this point of rehab is sedentary human. Over here is CrossFit ready, and you'll go to CrossFit at this point here. Because you've been signed off by the physio, or, you know, you've been told that you're okay, and your body's not ready for that level yet. And that bit is the bit that people need to work on.
There's a big gap to bridge, right, in between those.
It's the same with jiu-jitsu. The amount of, like, the demands of the body are very extreme, especially since there's forces beyond your own body that's being pressed against you, especially in ranges of motion, that you kind of need to address. Like, you're going to, otherwise, you know, there's a reason there's a lot of injuries in jiu-jitsu, and it's because not only are we trying to manipulate each other's joints into, like, painful places, but also, like, when you get stacked and people are pushing you into ranges of motion that your body's not ready for, there's only one place for it to go, and that's injury, and you're gonna get hurt. So, you know, like you, Nick, you cannot now get your legs pushed over your head, can you? It's just literally an area where you can't even let it happen.
No, I've had a couple of times where that's happened, you know, involuntarily as such, and that's been that's put me sort of on my back for a week, 2 weeks last year.
Is that what you've? Is it?
No, I've got like there's a couple of prolapse discs and things like that, but it's not. I've had you know, an injection in the nerve, this and that, but I haven't got like loads of shooting pain down my leg or anything like that. So I'm not interested in any surgery to try and do anything, because basically the guy's like, you know, it's not going to do anything. It's, you know, if you have pain down your leg or whatever, and I'm like, well, I'll try and keep doing stuff that I can do to try and strengthen my core. There's lots of stuff I can do for core strength, and, you know.
But interestingly enough, you've been doing Pilates and things like that.
Yeah, I have.
And it's actually having a positive effect.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like, yoga, Pilates, all this stuff, anything that you can do, it's just a case of doing it, because it is, like, often it's like, oh gosh, you know, go and do it, and it's like, you know, it's not like a super, like, a thing that go, oh look, I'm doing a thing, like, it's but for me, if it will give me more longevity in being able to do a thing I find fun, then that's what I'm interested in. And it's really hard, because no one tells you what you want to know about it, or like, right, you're good to go, off you go, and you're like, right, okay, well, but I do this, and they go, yeah, you're not going to be good to do that yet. And then another, you know, I go to someone else, and they go, yeah, you're, you know, just fine. But now I'm you know, at home, I've been practicing with drills, you know, inverting, putting my feet on the ground behind me when I invert, and walking around, you know, and that's a range of motion I've been able to get to now relatively comfortably. But it's the pressure on top of that, and then pushing away in the back, that's what's always done it.
It's because it's with, like, that's like essentially
with the load on.
It's essentially, you haven't got any weight, have you? You're kind of,
then I'm great, I can bend around like that, that's fine, and I can improve this movement and range of motion in that. But once there's load on it and you're pushing away as well, that's when it's been a problem.
100%. We've kind of, like, been bandying around the word mobility, and then you said that you're not interested in seeing how far someone can passively stretch or stretch.
No.
So I'd just like to like, in your words, because this is your area,
So
clear up the difference between flexibility and mobility for people.
Okay. So it's, you know, like some people will have a natural ability to be able to work to getting their legs behind their head. Yeah, and that will be a zero sensation thing for that person. That doesn't make that person a better person because they can do that. You know, it could be down to their skeletal structure, whatever. You know, there's a million reasons why some people can do stuff and some people can't. It depends on tendon stiffness. It depends on loads and loads of different things. So I am not interested in how like bendy someone is. That stuff doesn't impress me. I'm interested in the control that someone has through their natural full range of motion, and if they require some more full range of motion, like I don't know, let's take the knee for example. Okay, so let's say that a thing that would be nice for people would be that they could straighten the leg. You know, some people are not going to be able to straighten the leg because they've got really, really tight hamstrings, so they're going to need to work on that range of motion, because it would be nice to be able to straighten the legs. It's not an essential thing to have, but for a lot of people, that's something that they require for many things. I don't know why you'd need it or whatever.
Or they just want.
But
or they just want it.
They just want it, you know, or whatever. But it's so you know, like we talk a lot about like mobility, which is having an active range of motion, being able to actively control that range without a passive input. So if I can get a strap around my leg and pull my leg straight, I'm using the strap as a passive input, which is fine, yeah? But if I can straighten that leg by itself, that's my mobility. My flexibility is how far I can passively go with potentially an external input, and my mobility is the range that I can control. Yeah. Mobility, in the case of jiu-jitsu, is certainly a more useful thing to have. Yeah. You can't have mobility without flexibility. No. So the more natural range of motion you have, I mean, I'm making massive assumptions here, like, and I'm really, really, really generalizing. But if someone is quite flexible naturally, they usually are able to sort of bring something up to a level. If they let go of it, there'll be quite a deficit as they drop it, you know, and that's quite normal. But in a way, they have an advantage because they can work to strengthen that range of motion that they can't control. So passive flexibility is important if you want to increase your active range of motion. Your active range of motion, if you're active and able to hold those things, it means that you have more tissue capacity in those places. Tissue capacity is important because it's where we are in control. It's where we have more strength. So that's the places we're less likely to get as injured. But, you know, I used to be very anti-passive stretching, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm anti-passive stretching when people push and push and push and force and force and force and believe that's going to make them more flexible. It's not. You know, it's really, really simple. So the reason that your knee won't straighten is not because your muscle's too short. It's because your nervous system doesn't think that it's safe for you to straighten your knee. And when
you first told me that, it absolutely blew my mind.
What, that you're...
Well, it's true in the sense, like, so when I was doing some Pilates where you sit back square on the wall, my legs are flat, which is a position I very rarely go into because it gives me pain. And doing these, you know, these stretching, bringing my feet back in with you like this one where you bring it up towards you and stuff. And the next day I felt amazing, and it felt like a case of that my brain's going, what are you doing? Don't do that. That's going to hurt us. And then you go, no, do it anyway. And then it goes, oh no, it's okay. Actually, I can still do that. But it tries to protect. It feels like it's a protection thing rather than
exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. So, like, if you are the sedentary desk dweller who sits at a desk and then sits in the car and then comes home and sits at the dinner table and then sits on the sofa, you know, so your nervous system is used to your hamstring being in that slightly shortened place because the knee never straightens. So the second you try and straighten your knee, the stretch reflex literally puts the brakes on and goes, whoa, we don't know about this place. I don't think that's safe. So we're going to send a signal. It doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity there. So there's kind of like several different ways you can do that. Time, if you don't want to push to the stretch reflex because it just heightens the sensitivity. Yeah, you want to stop and relax before that. So staying for a little while, passively, after the 2 minutes or so, your nervous system will go, oh, okay, this is safe.
I want to add to this point, especially being a PT in the gym.
Yeah.
I see it all the time where guys are like, oh, I need to stretch this out. I need to stretch this certain place out. Or in jiu-jitsu, actually, I see it at the end of classes as well. And like, you want their nervous system to start relaxing, calm down, but instead they're sitting there and they're sat in this stretch with their legs apart or wherever, and they're doing this with their face, like that, and they're like thinking that the longer, as if they just keep, and I have been there myself, which is why I said that blew my mind, because I figured that it's like I just figured that my muscle was like an elastic band, and that you pull on it long enough and they hold it there long enough, and eventually it will just go lax. But that is absolutely not the case. And I think people get really confused with the fact that they think that if they just pull, if they stretch really hard, as soon as they get that feeling, because they can feel the muscle being like pulled, they feel that pull on the muscle, and they're like, that's it being stretched out. If I just hold it there long enough, eventually it will become lax. But if they're like this, and straining, your body's actually fighting back against it, isn't it? It's actually going.
Yeah, you're basically you're triggering your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is going to contract your muscles more because it's going to prepare you for your fight or flight. So I believe it shouldn't hurt. I believe that when you're trying to increase the range of motion and you're passively stretching something,
you're cramping in classes then. I don't believe that for a second.
See, cramping's active.
Yeah, but that hurts, man.
Right? It does. So if you're, let's take the leg stretch as an example, yeah? If you're pulling on a strap and you're getting pain in the back of your leg, if your knee is hurting and your sit bone is hurting where the insertion points are pulling and pulling, that is not a good pain. Your body is going to react by going, whoa, let's not let this relax, let's not let this straighten out there. So you're actually going to get zero reaction. But if you relax into it with a bent knee, your body's going to feel safe. It's going to allow for more range. And when that stretch reflex, quietens down or whatever. But the thing about the stretch reflex is it resets all the time. So if you've had a really shit day, or you go into a class and you've shouted at someone in the car park or whatever, you're going to be in that heightened state. So your stretch reflex is going to be a bit more sensitive. So it's going to set the sensitivity on that shortened hamstring. So you'll be like, oh God, I can't straighten my knee today. But it'll be potentially because you're in a state of stress. Whereas some days you're like, I feel really loose today. I'm really mobile. And yeah, maybe you're more chilled out. Who knows? But so these are like neurological things that happen, and neurological changes happen very quickly. They're very instant and they're very changeable. Changing tissue takes time. A lot of time. Muscle changes happen quicker than sort of tendon changes and ligament changes, but this stuff takes time and they react differently to different inputs. So like I know people that have stretched and worked actively and stuff for years and years and years, and they've reached a point, and I'm at this point now, where my passive range and my active range are exactly the same. And I don't have extreme ranges by any means, but if I want to get more range, I have to go passively into more range. And then I have to solidify that range or whatever. So it really depends on who you are and where you are, as to what's right for you. But generally speaking, everyone should be able to control the range that they have. And I see a lot of the CrossFit guys and jiu-jitsu guys or whatever go, oh, well, like you say, that guy is sitting there with his legs wide, pushing and pushing and pushing, because he thinks that, hey, and there's this saying, isn't there, no pain, no gain? And it's not, it's no pain, no pain. And that's what you have to remember is it's like you're trying to override your nervous system. And tissue changes are going to take a minimum of 18 months to actually get the tissues to sort of increase capacity, strength and change. It's 18 months at least. And
It's
you can
exactly
choose
the
a
same, like,
really hard route of work, but you need to stay there a very, 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 very long time to make changes. Or you can start looking at the isometric route and the sort of eccentric route, and you'll get quicker changes. That's fundamental. It's been proven, like there's literature to back it up. So
yeah, exactly that. And the only thing I can attribute that it's like tissue change does take a long time is when people like want to put on muscle like very quickly. Like it takes time, like, and you can't just put on muscle. You can't just go in to the gym for a month, do a bunch of bicep curls, and then expect your bicep to be massive, the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger's. It takes years of repeated
loads of steroids.
well, that will get you big quickly, mate. That will, especially your traps and your deltoids. But
but yeah, changes take time. But then there's kind of like so many little tangents that you can go off on this because another portion of mobility work or yoga or stretching work or whatever you want to call it is also do what feels good. You know, like I am very vocal about what I believe works, and it comes from my own practice and things that I've seen work with students, and I know that the formula is very similar with what works, and the thing that works for me is, you know, solidifying those end ranges, working into them actively. They work. How you get there is a different story. Some people need the passive route. You know, there's different routes to get there. But also, if you just need to chill the fuck out after your jiu-jitsu session, and that is through a few minutes of passive stretching or whatever, brilliant. If it makes your body feel good, do it. And I think like we shouldn't feel guilty for doing the things that actually make us feel good, because that has an effect on our nervous system as well.
Yeah, like agreed. And if it doesn't feel good and you're not enjoying it, then how are you going to stick to it for the long periods of times that it does take for the tissues to change?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, cramps don't feel good to a lot of people, but
the weird thing is, it's kind of a bit like muscle ache. It doesn't feel good, but you're like, because you feel something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you get a, like, even if it's like a painful sensation to begin with, you're like, whoa, well, that definitely did something.
Yeah.
There's something's gone on there that I'm not sure quite what happened.
It's usually a bit of a truth teller.
It's a bit like DOMS, isn't it? Like the pain of like muscle ache, although
it's an achievement
it sucks. You know you've done something because you've got that ache, and it becomes addictive, and it's the same with that kind of cramping sensation. If that makes sense. In fact, sometimes if you don't get the cramp, like if I don't get the cramp in your class for whatever reason, I'm like, what have I done wrong? I haven't done it right. I didn't get cramp that time.
No, but I think that's really important. Like I'm again, if we like generalize people, like if you've got a very muscle bound guy who comes in and he trains for
thanks, mate.
Yeah, that's you, obviously, from a few years ago. Yeah, he trains for muscles and stuff like that. And a new load to his body is going to be a passive stretch. It's going to benefit him because he's taking, you know, like if he's like, oh, I've never straightened my arm out because I want to work biceps all the time, you know, stretching passively in that direction is going to really benefit him. If someone is sedentary, do anything is going to benefit that person, whether it's weightlifting or it doesn't matter. Let them do something, for God's sake. And if someone has been practicing yoga for 10 years and they've never worked actively, passively stretching is not going to really do them any favors anymore. So well, we say on the course, when Sam does his little bit, it's like the most useful trainings are progressive and variable, aren't they? Just something that's vary it, move it around.
It's something so important with any type of training that it has to be progressive or you stagnate. In fact, we were talking about this on another podcast with Nick and how he does this in jiu-jitsu by basically, he said that he gets, when he trains with Laurie, he does private sessions with Laurie, he focuses on an area or a certain position, and he utilizes that position until he can do it in sparring, and then he moves on. So basically he's kind of in himself is progressively training a certain pattern. So he'll start off where he'll like Laurie will tell him something, he'll practice it in a scenario in class with like basically someone who's not resisting, and then he'll try and continually work that same position as someone tries to resist with better opponents until he starts getting it on a higher level people, so the people who can shut it down better. And then he knows, okay, well, I'm proficient in that now. I can move on to I'm as good as I want to be in that area. I can move on to the next. So it works for everything. It works with weight training. It works with yoga. It works with like mobility. And it also works with jiu-jitsu. It's just applying it the right way.
If everyone was like that, wouldn't the world be a wonderful place? People get like shiny syndrome, don't they? Shiny object syndrome, where it's like, in mobility, like a little while ago, it's still around that, the 90-90 position with your legs is such a go-to thing. But like most people I know aren't ready for it. Most people don't have the capacity to sit in that 90-degree angle. And you see it all the time. It's like, mobility class, we're going to work into this. And it's just like, well, what the fuck are you actually asking out of these hips?
Why? A lot of internal rotation, a lot of
does this person possess internal rotation? No. So where are they compensating? They're compensating all over the rest of their body in order to get their legs in that position. So are you doing that person any favours? No.
Yeah.
You're just going to hurt them long term.
It's mad, isn't it?
This is the problem. I'm going off on one now. It's going to happen. This is the problem with people who see stuff on the internet, or people who have done a little bit of training or a little bit of mobility work, and they see this stuff and they think that, I can teach that. I know that. And they don't know it enough to be able to safely teach that.
The depth of around it, that's the thing, not just something, but knowing, because like you said earlier, everyone's different as well, so you, like I was going to ask, that's when you're dealing with a class of people that potentially have got completely different abilities and aspects within themselves anyway. And so if someone's putting them in a position where they've got, I want to do this, and everyone's goals are different, it's not a one size fits all from that, like if there's such a small aim, like to do that, sit in that position, for example, and everyone's going to have these different things about them. It's kind of, it must be very, very difficult to navigate everyone's individual needs and like what their makeup to like get to what you do.
Yeah, it is difficult, and I do think that that's something that comes from experience, because
the knowledge and depth around it
is quite simple. Because I remember, like, when I first started teaching and we were looking at, I don't know, malasana, which is a squat, which is a yogic squat, and you'd look around the room and a couple of people couldn't do it, and you'd be like, okay, you just do something else, and you wouldn't know how to do it. Whereas then you go, okay, well, like years later you go, that person's got no ankle dorsiflexion, okay, so I'm just going to give them something to put underneath their heels so that we can take the ankles out of the equation, they can get down here. So I find it really easy to do now, and it becomes a room of just curiosity and learning, and we quite often will observe other people in the room and just notice the differences in our bodies, because it's not elitist, it's just, okay, Sam's got no ankle dorsiflexion, but so-and-so's got incredible hip flexion. Let's just see how bodies work differently.
I think that you've hit the nail on the head there, though. It's like the understanding and the learning.
Yeah.
You're not, you haven't just like read something or
not a manual, just a one size fits all manual.
Someone's given you a manual and you've just taught it straight out of, you just read what it says there. So I'm going to give you like an easy example. And it's about knowing the hows and the whys. Why is that? Like you said, the squat, you've gone, well, they need to do something else because they can't sit in a squat. But then you've gone, but why can't they sit? You've asked yourself that question. Why can't they sit in a squat and that person can? And then you've done some research and you've gone, okay, well, potentially it could be such and such, such and such, such and such. And eventually you kind of deduced that, okay, well, I can sort of see now they're not flexing in the ankle. They're going to struggle in that range of motion because that, biomechanically.
And also, I think, like, when you're doing that, it's also okay as a teacher or whatever to say you don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, more often than not, I'll be like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
you know, and so many people are so desperate to become an expert in something. That's when it's dangerous. Like, what are some of the weird things that we've seen? Like, overactive hips. That was one of them, wasn't it?
Absolutely outrageous.
I can see from this static picture that this person has overactive hips.
I mean, I don't even know what that means.
What does it mean?
That is
We don't know. You know, there's some crazy claims, and this is like the best teachers I know. Yeah, are people that go, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, because no one knows
everything
going on in someone else's body. No one knows. You can make some assumptions, and you can perhaps see a overall picture and think of ways to maybe help them out a little bit. But
I'd rather hear someone say, I don't know, but I'm going to go and find out, and then next week when you come back, I'll have a solution for you, or we'll do something differently. Than someone go, yeah, no, that's fine, and you do this, and then you think, okay, and you do it, you think, it's not right, is it? You know, I'd much rather someone's, no, don't do that. You do something different then for today, and then next week you come back and you go, okay, brilliant. Like, just going to find out what's going on. Like, that's great.
And also, like, not being afraid to like try a few different things, like on the spot.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to make assumptions, and you go, how does that feel? They go, it feels like shit. You're like, oh, okay. What if you moved your foot? Oh yeah, that feels better. Okay, we'll try. You know, and you just start unpicking it, and you just start finding solutions, and that's and this is what it comes down to. Because, and I think perhaps you're better at this in jiu-jitsu, is like you were saying earlier, Nick, with knowing that when you know, do whatever it was you're doing with your legs, it hurts when there's load, but you've been able to work your way into, so you're able to determine what feels safe in your body, what feels good in your body, and you're empowered with that now. And this is so important, that you empower people to know, because
learning it's definitely a learning curve, I have to say. Exactly that, like knowing, you know, empowering yourself within movements and stuff. You do know, you kind of, half the time your brain's like, is so overcautious, and you've got to push it, haven't you? But 100% it's that, like, feeling empowered in those positions and the movement.
And like, if I don't know, like if I'm teaching, I'm going to go back to the leg stretch, because if I'm teaching someone a leg stretch, I don't know what they're feeling. I can assume that I know what they're feeling. So the best thing you can do is say, well, what do you feel? And they go, oh, it feels horrible in my knee. And you're like, well, that's not good. That's not what we're getting out of here. So the whole thing with teaching people movement is to teach them to understand how they feel, what they feel, and not, they go, oh, what should I feel? You're like, no. What do you feel? And then you get them to be okay with saying, well, actually, this feels like shit.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, let's move.
It's like leading questions. Like, I really struggle. Like, sometimes I'm like, I have to ask, like, where do you feel it? So that I know that they're telling the truth, because it's very easy, especially being a personal trainer, to be like, you'll feel that in the quad, and then people go, yeah, I do feel that in the quad, and you're like, okay, right, I need to stop leading them with those questions, because they might not be feeling it in their quad, but they're just saying what I want to hear. So
also, you know, telling them where they're tight and why.
Yeah,
you hear that all the time. You're really tight in the lats, and that's why you can't reach your arms over your head.
Yeah.
How, like so many people, not when you reach your arm overhead, where do you feel the restriction? Well, actually, I feel it here. Okay, so that's not your lat.
Yeah.
You know, but like you see this assumption all the time.
I've done it. You know, like I've been there, gone, oh yeah, that's got to be that. You know, because
it's easy, because you want it to make sense.
Generally, you're trying to rationalize it in your head, like why that is there, but the reality is you don't know. And it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of comes around to the point that I was going to make a little while ago, and that was like, I remember reading a book, Supple Leopard.
Oh, fuck off.
So I read, and it's and I thought this was like my Bible when I got it.
I didn't know you could read, Sam.
Honestly, mate, it's got very little words. There's loads of pictures. I think that's why. But like they kind of fearmonger, like from what I can understand now, is like they're like, you have to do that movement like this guy's demonstrating, or else that's no good. You're moving, you're going to get injured. Basically, you're going to hurt yourself if you don't move like the guy in the picture looks like. If you don't look like that shape, you're going to get hurt. like it's very absolutes and like very do this way and don't do it any other way and you'll be okay. And like when at the time I was like, God, that makes so much sense. Yeah, you know, like that's really what I do. And
because people want this, don't they? They want the perfect equation.
Solution, an equation.
Yeah, they want the beautiful picture. But if you look at bodies, we're totally asymmetrical. You know, like if I try and stand with my feet facing forward, my right knee hurts.
Yeah.
And it took me years to work out that my right hip is more externally rotated than my left. And that's not a mechanical fault. That's how I'm built. You know, so when I squat, my right foot turns out more than my left. And I go to someone who's a PT and they go, oh my God, your feet. So they correct my right foot and I start loading that knee and my knee blows up the next day and I can't move it. And I go, well, can you just let me turn my right foot out because my hip's actually at that position? And people are so fearful of natural body differences because it doesn't fit in with their ideal. So they force this shape. And it doesn't make any sense. We have to respect our differences. We have to respect our natural bodies and stuff. And we have to train around that.
Yep.
Because we're not symmetrical. We're not the same. And so when you've got a book like that that's telling you exactly where to put your feet and telling you exactly how it doesn't make any sense.
And if you don't do that, you'll definitely
hurt yourself. Yeah.
You know, like that's generally, from what I've noticed, is not the case. Like you can be as wonky as anything. Like I think my my wife's an example of that with scoliosis in her spine, and you know she's never, where her scoliosis is in the upper part of her back. You've never had any problems there, have you?
I have back problems, but I think it's I don't think it's really specifically related. It was an injury. I don't know really.
Yeah.
But I've had scoliosis most of my life, and it's not been a problem. It's only been the last few years that I've had back problems.
Yeah. So skeletal scoliosis as well, not.
But that's, you know, but Vic's really clever with how you train, and you don't let it stop you, and you accept in like yoga that there's a side that you feel more wonky on and stuff, and you're not trying to straighten out that side or anything else. You're just mindful of
you can only do what you
things
can
feel
do.
different on one side. I remember you saying like when you lie back you can feel yourself rolling to one side and stuff like that, but that's your body. That's normal. I
block under my left hip if I'm doing Happy Baby, because I'll just fall sideways.
Exactly. And but the thing is if you tried to stay straight and then you tried to work your hips, you'd actually be working one hip so much more than the other. So it doesn't make sense to be straight. It makes sense for you to be wonky there, because you know, and it's just like you can't base people's bodies around a generic ideal, because it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense at all. And I mean, like you were saying, Sam, you're saying that there's actually no, it was my Sam who was saying this, you know, in certain lifts and stuff like that, it makes sense that weight distribution and all that sort of thing, it does make sense that you want to be lined up to allow that sort of stuff.
When it comes to like lifting weights and leverages, there's going to be an optimal versus a less optimal to be able to lift if you're thinking about lifting maximal weights, or you know, as you can. But
also then if you look at, you know, like I love like Strong Camp's message that he has, you know, is that the human body is so adaptable, it's so capable, and if you are willing to train capacity in weird places, you're going to be prepared for anything.
By the way, Nick, you're not going to know this guy, but this guy Strong Camps, he is a madman, and he will literally like lift like weights and weird stuff in weird places, like for basically just kind of like, I think the other day, basically just goes to the middle of the desert where it looks like the desert anyway. He just picks up rocks, like massive rocks, like over his head, and like just drops them on the ground just because like it's hard lift. You know, you can't do that.
He's asymmetric.
He's like hunched over as he wrenches it up and lifts it over his head. And I think the other day, part of his training was he just got a wire. He just held a wire on that was attached to a broken post, and he was just pulling it as hard as he could, like just to pull it. It's not going to go anywhere because it's attached.
Sounds like Juji Mufu.
Yeah, honestly, but he's really strong and like really like mobile, just because he can.
Yeah.
He's trained himself to be able to take those kind of like get into weird positions and weird like not like, well, I say not natural, but like not everyday positions, and be able to load them with loads of weight and be able to, his body can take it because he's adapted so well.
But he's not, you know, like he's someone who trains because he trains for capacity, whereas people, I don't know, who maybe like you PT or whatever, some people just train to be able to squat. Some people just train to be able to do CrossFit. You know, that is their goal, which, you know, fine. No one wants to take away what your goal is for you, but sometimes you get so stuck in this perfect form, snatches, deadlifts, or whatever, when it's like, well, actually, life isn't perfect. And I know, Vic, when you hurt your back, wasn't that like bending over to scrub something on the floor or something like that?
Carpet on my hands and knees.
It was the carpet, yeah, exactly. So it can be
Probably
like
food I spelt on it, like just
yeah, probably no amount of
I was scrubbing the floor.
yeah, exactly, and like no amount of deadlifting or squatting or whatever is going to prepare you for something like that. Some wonky sort of so you have to like. I think your mobility or your training, whatever, should be applicable to life.
Yeah. Mine's always lifting and twisting. It's always lifting and twisting that does something. 100%. I always forget it as well.
Yeah.
Like your class is Sam on a Wednesday night, and we're doing like takedowns, and I lifted Adam up.
Yeah.
And like up like that, take it down like that, and I was like, oh, that was a stupid thing to do.
Yeah. Well, you even afterwards, after the fact, you were like, I knew it was probably going to be bad, but I did it. Because your back had been feeling good for a while. You were like, well, it must be all right now.
Yeah, I think I'm probably superhuman.
I can lift another human being with it.
Yeah, that was an error. So I've learned. I learned over the mistakes, and I am a slow learner. So
the thing is, it doesn't mean that you're never ever going to be able to do that. But it will just take a long time, and you've got to start from the very bottom and work lifting another person's not where you want to go from injury to lifting another person. You want to be like slowly. Yeah, exactly. Well, I know we all learn. It takes a long time, doesn't it?
I know, but you have those days and you're like, I feel amazing. This is great. I'm going to do that. And then you go, oh, this is not good at all.
Yeah.
This is
worse. Happened out of the blue. Like I think I was rolling one on a Saturday, and I think I had it was probably my fault because I just went straight into like hard sparring without any warm up. I think I was filming, and I was into filming on the camera. I was chatting, and then someone was like, "Oh, do you want to roll?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do actually. I haven't trained." Chucked the camera on the side, went straight into a roll, and then like I was like, "Oh, my back really hurts now." And then like for weeks after, I was like, "Oh, I've got a real sore back." Like going into my hip. In fact, at one point I thought I had sciatica. I went to see Hannah, and I was like, "Please help me! I think I'm in so much pain." And she was like, "Okay, I'll try this. But if that works, if that doesn't work, come back." And I was like, "No, that's actually helped me a lot." Okay. And,
it's easily done, though. It's easily done.
Exactly. It's just knowing where you're at within your own body, and respecting it by giving it time to adapt to the changes and to the force that you're going to put it through. And if you're doing like an extreme sport or a sport like jiu-jitsu, go and do some training. Go and do some training in some end ranges and stuff.
I think you do need to supplement these things, don't you? This is it. It's absurd, really, to think, when probably the same as you, Sam, when I started, I was like, I can't get injured. This is ridiculous. Like, the fun bit is doing that. I'll do that. I don't need to do anything else. Yeah. And then the older I get, I'm like, right, predominantly I need to do things that enable my body to do the thing that I find fun.
Yeah.
And you spend far less time doing the funnest bit, but that's okay.
It gets to a point as you get older where it becomes about longevity and the stuff that
exactly.
rather than just being able to do it because I can.
Yeah.
Now you realise that there's your body can only take so much you know, for a certain amount of time, and being able to try and stretch that short amount of time out for as long as possible.
And when you are able to do it, when you are younger, like, and you do something like this, do that stuff as well to supplement the training. Like, so, you know, that's only something I can assume. I was like, yeah, it's fine. And yeah, it was for a while, but it's not going to help in the long term. So, you know, do all the other stuff as well, and you'll get better at everything and be able to do it for longer. That only seems sensible, but it seems like I'm learning these things very late.
Same. I think it's like, me too, mate. Me too.
Yeah.
I'm lucky I've got Hannah like pushing me in the right direction. I think she was telling me for about 2 years, you know, you're doing that extreme sport, mate. You're lifting all those weights, but you're not doing anything else to supplement.
You're like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, enough, right?
Did you see?
He doesn't bend too well, Sam. You might want to think about looking at that. No, it'll be fine. The doctor's patted me on the bum and told me it's going to be all right. It'll be all right in a few months.
Sam, did you see? I think it's Moses Bernard who describes it really well. And he talks about like the sort of like, he's got a little graph like this, and, you know, the bottom line is time or whatever. And he said that, you know, things start declining, but we don't get symptoms until like Vic's case, like just bending over and scrubbing the carpet, like what had been going on in your back had been going on for ages to get to that point before it suddenly went. And people blame injuries and stuff on CrossFit and stuff like that, but it's not. It's God knows what, but it's just maybe how your body works or whatever, or it's how you've sat.
Ignoring things a lot. Ignoring stuff, I reckon, is a big
thing. And I think people are very guilty of ignoring things, and so they get to I think Moses calls it the oh shit period, where you hit that, and that's the bit when you ask for help. But the problem is on the way onto that decline, and that whole bit is that's when you should be doing the maintenance. That's when you should be putting in the hard work, and that's where decent mobility work comes in, and the strength work and stuff like that, because we don't notice the decline until you hit the shit bit when 100. Something goes. And then, but that's a whole new conversation, because I'm like, the more I learn about pain and like pain science, is like so fascinating about, really, there's no correlation between tissue damage and pain. There's none. They've done loads and loads of tests on it, so you can have people with disc issues and, you know, like bulging discs and stuff, and zero pain, and some people with nothing showing up on MRIs and loads of pain. So pain is a really, really complex thing. But like, understanding the importance of maintenance in your body is the thing that is going to serve you the best. But it's, you know, it's boring, because you go, well, I feel all right, I feel fine, I don't need to do this shit because I feel fine. But you do need to do that shit, because one day you won't feel fine.
You've got to do it anyway.
And, you know, like, about, you know, knowing or asking the whys in what you're doing as well. Like, why are you doing it? Why are we doing this? You know, rather than just someone telling you, do this for that and you'll be all right. Rather, like, why am I doing that? Why is it? You know, and that's something, you know, I learned as a trainer as well. Like, before I set exercises, it's easy to set exercises for people, but if you really look at the whys, why am I doing it for that person, rather than the fact that maybe it's just like makes them work hard, you know, it makes them sweat, that's why I'm getting them to do it. Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? What's the end goal? And then get them work.
I like your ethics that you have, because I imagine as a PT you see a lot of people who want to come for you know, for physical reasons, to look good or whatever, which is fine, you know, like everyone should have a reason for doing everything, whatever that is. But when you started looking down the performance route over the aesthetic, it was like, actually, this perhaps gives you more excitement as a trainer.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it's very difficult, especially if you like body composition. It's very difficult, not just to build muscle and to get people to commit enough time to be able to do it, but actually just to try and make people a bit stronger and feel a bit better is way more rewarding than how they look. And I try and, like, get people away from that, unless it's their real goal, unless they really want to get to there. But I get more enjoyment out of, making people feel better within themselves than just looking good in the mirror, because it doesn't correlate. Like especially when you do something like, I think I said this on your course, like when I was in my early 20s, all I wanted to do was to look as good as I possibly could, even if that did mean looking like a bit of a doughboy, being really thick.
The haircut though.
But I had so much hair, it's beautiful. Just to try and I think just to look good, so I could probably pick up some girls on a weekend. And as soon as I sort of picked up a sport like jiu-jitsu, it kind of changed my whole outlook. Actually, I thought I was doing really well by doing thousands of bicep curls and having massive arms, but in reality it didn't help me when some 60-kilo man is choking me. I have to give up. That didn't help me one bit. So now I enjoy doing
perspective on what's important and what you think,
and maybe getting big and getting really big is important to you, and that's absolutely fine. But for me, my change, it made me feel better when I looked at how I was moving, how unfit I was, how I couldn't do a 5. What was going to help me in my sport? And that's, I think, again, like I was saying, you look at that end goal and then you work backwards from that. And I think that's kind of where it's all gone, really, for me. But yeah, and I think you're pretty much the same, right? So you're, instead of looking at I'm talking to you, Hannah, you, instead of just doing the pose for the sake of doing the pose, you're looking at the pose.
But that's what I mean earlier when I said that range of motion doesn't impress me.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in how much range of motion you have. I'm interested in what you want the range of motion for.
Yeah.
Because technically you could keep going. You can keep folding forward, and if you touch the floor, you take the floor away. You sit on something and you keep moving. And then you move into contortion, which is fine if that's your goal or whatever. But that's the reason you want the range of motion is what's the important thing. If it's to help you squat, to help you jiu-jitsu, fine. If it's to be able to get on the floor and play with your kids, fine. Whatever it is, but just constantly increasing range of motion for the sake of it, why? That's never impressed me. It doesn't interest me at all. I see it quite a lot with some other yoga teachers and stuff that I know that just want more and more and more, constantly, and it's just well, why? I don't get it. And I suppose I came into yoga thinking that was an important part of it, to be able to continuously have more range. Like I said earlier, control, strength within that range, and useful ranges for what you want to do is really important. Yeah, bulletproof and get every range you have absolutely massively strong.
Yeah.
But then if you want to do the box splits, fine, let's do them too. But
yeah, right.
Let's be honest about it. I want to do the box splits because it looks cool. Great
Cool.
reason to do them.
I want to do the box splits.
Let's do them then. Let's work towards the box split.
I won't be able to bend my knee, but I can sure bend my hips.
Let's do it.
That, I think, was awesome. I think we'll wrap that up there.
Okay.
That's a good point to end on. Plus, it's quite late.
Yeah.
Nick's eyes falling, very old. Look at him.
I'm going to eat my dinner.
Yeah, you haven't had your dinner yet?
No.
Oh, dude.
I've got to say goodnight to my children as well. They're waiting for me.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on. That
Thank
was
you.
awesome. Probably one of the best mobility chats we've had. Probably because we've had less wine than we usually do.
Yes, that's very true. I've only had one glass.
Going into these rants. But, we'll definitely have you back on again. We'll talk more about all of this stuff, and we'll get your opinions on things like foam rollers, because you're really.
Don't get started on a foam roller.
I've triggered Hannah now, so we better get out of here before she starts.
Yeah, before I start.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Hannah.
All right. Thank you.
Us.
Us.